want you to take any famous writer and find the shortest sentence in their book and the very longest sentence in their book. And now go to a piece of your writing and look for the very shortest sentence in your book and the very longest sentence. 99% of the time, you will find that the established writer has both shorter sentences than you and longer sentences. That's because they're really good at sentence variety. And sentence variety is one of those things that every writer can get better at. Now, we're not going to deal with long sentences today. That's a video for another time. But today we are going to focus on short sentences. Like really, really short sentences. I'm going to give you 7 tips on how to write short sentences that will have readers obsessing about your book. 1. Use contrast. What's the perfect place for a short sentence? It's after a very, very, very long sentence. Why? Because the contrast makes the short sentence seem even more shocking. You probably know Cormac McCarthy because he wrote The Road and No Country for Old Men, and he is renowned for writing very long sentences. But you know what? He doesn't shy away from very short ones either. In Blood Meridian, there's one short sentence he repeats again and again and again. It's very short, it's 3 words, it's "they rode on." Repeating it multiple times makes it feel like, oh, the journey is endless, like they just kept on writing and writing and writing. But the placement of where he puts this very short sentence is very telling. The sentence before it is 89 words long. Then he said, "they rode on." And then the sentence after it is 78 words. So use contrast to your advantage and have a very long sentence before and maybe after a very short sentence. Also, it should be a bucket list for you that you should try to write a 3-word sentence in your book. It's a good goal to have. 2, make a catchphrase. Kurt Vonnegut has a 3-word phrase he uses again and again in Slaughterhouse-Five. "So it goes." You get this sense of resignation like, what can you do? And when Vonnegut uses that phrase again and again against the backdrop of World War II and the carpet bombing of Dresden, which was one of the most horrific events of that entire war, it creates this crazy contrast between that sort of lackadaisical attitude and the horrific events actually happening on the ground. So I ask you, what 3-word phrase captures the spirit of your novel? And what character could repeat it throughout? Number 3, end your book on a short line. George Orwell's 1984 is about a man fighting a totalitarian government named Big Brother. He spends his entire life resisting the authorities and trying not to submit. But after loads of torture and social conditioning, the novel ends with one of the most chilling lines of all time. He loved Big Brother. Only 4 words. Could you imagine if this had been a longer line? Just imagine if Orwell had written, "But it was all right. Everything was all right. The struggle was finished because he had won the victory over himself since he loved Big Brother." The wordiness would diminish the sadness. When readers get blindsided by that sparse forward reply, they want to cry. So don't feel like you need long sentences to convey complex emotions. Sometimes you just need a gut punch of a very short sentence. 4, make a funnel shape. So sometimes a short sentence works really well as the climax to your paragraph. Joan Didion has this great essay about marriage, specifically about the relationship between her husband and her family. Now this paragraph is made up of 6 sentences, and every single sentence gets a little bit shorter until finally we reach the climax of that last sentence, which is the point of the whole paragraph. Marriage is the classic betrayal. So the first sentence is 104 words, then 57 words, then 50 words, then 12 words, then 12 words, and that last sentence is only 5 words long. So the whole paragraph is shaped like a funnel, starting large and then funneling you down to that tiny, powerful sentence. 5, cluster short sentences together. Usually you don't want too many sentences of the exact same length in a row because then it'll seem redundant. But over and over again, I see authors put 3 very short sentences in a row because it hits you like 3 quick punches. Here, Roberto Bolaño uses 4 short sentences in a row. 5 words, 5 words, 6 words, 4 words. And what it does is it really forces the reader to slow down and actually look at these tiny details. The sentences are very matter of fact and they're all concentrating on different colors of shoes. Clustering is a wonderful technique to use when you want to slow down the pace of a certain paragraph or when you really want to emphasize something. And I should also point out that the sentence before those short sentences and the sentence after are both longer. Number 6, open your novel. It is so difficult to decide on the very first line of your book. There's so much at stake. There's so many possibilities out there. But instead of trying to cram a ton of information into that first line, why not start with a very short sentence? If you think about it, a ton of famous novels start with very short sentences. Call Me Ishmael. The old man was dreaming about the lions. Lolita. Light of my life. Fire of my loins. All this happened, more or less. I am an invisible man. A screaming comes across the sky. All right, bonus points if you can name the authors or the book titles of all those lines. Well, maybe 3 and 5 should be pretty easy at least. So there are at least 3 advantages to starting your book with a very short line. 1, it's difficult to misinterpret. It's very clear to start with a short line. The reader's not going to be confused if you start with a 3 or 4 word sentence. 2, the reader is immediately inside your world. We immediately know there is an old man and he is dreaming, about lions. Or with the last one about screaming across the sky, we realize there's a missile coming. And number 3, a short first line is easy to quote, and it's very memorable. Call me Ishmael and I am an invisible man. They're quoted so often. Gabriel Garcia Marquez said that he used to spend months trying to get that very first sentence right, but once he did, everything flowed out from there. 7, a short sentence allows you to change your writing approach. David Foster Wallace has a short story I would not recommend you read. It is probably the most horrific short story I have ever read in my life. It's about a man accidentally spilling a pot of boiling water on his baby. Whoa. And so the short story is everything the father does in the minute afterwards to try to save his baby's life. And it has some very long sentences as the father is picking the baby up and putting him in the sink and running cold water all over him as the baby's screaming and crying. And the long sentences are just filled with the sounds and sights and smells and the frantic worry and energy of the father. But after all of that, David Foster Wallace switches to a very, very short sentence. But it's not anything about the description of the event, what's happening in the scene. It's much more about an abstract idea or a commentary upon the scene. Here's the line: if you've never wept and want to, have a child. Oh, kill me. If you have children, you know this is true. And it's true in the big picture, like, yes, children will break you, but it's also true in this particular circumstance with this father and this child. So you might adopt this strategy if you have a short declarative sentence that comments on everything that's happened beforehand. If you've enjoyed this video and want to learn more about sentences, you might enjoy my course, How to Write a Splendid Sentence. The link is in the bio, check it out. In it, you will learn things like the 2-3-1 rule, the leaning standalone rule for sentences, and how to break free of common sentence guidelines. Happy writing.